Today, I want to tell you about a movie called Big Brother. It's an action-packed drama comedy. Henry, a guy who served in the US military, returns to Hong Kong. He wants to become a teacher and lands a job at his old school, Tak Chi Secondary. The principal is skeptical because he lacks teaching experience, but a recommendation letter from a higher-up gets him the job. The catch is that he's assigned to the worst class in the school. On his first day, Henry walks into a chaotic classroom. Students are sleeping, singing, playing video games, and even cooking ramen. They completely ignore him. Despite his attempts to get their attention, they pretend not to hear him. Instead of forcing them to listen, Henry goes around the room commenting on what they're doing. He advises the ramen cookers to eat less sodium, helps a guy playing ukulele, and warns a gamer about screen radiation. When the students finally start paying attention, Henry introduces himself with a laughable attempt at neat handwriting. The students find it funny and ask him to leave, but he brushes it off. Undeterred, he uses a rubber band and chalk to trigger the fire sprinkler, scattering the students. Now, with their full attention, he officially welcomes them to his class.
Welcome to my class!
After school, Jack and his 4 friends, who are not doing well academically, gather in the sports supply room to smoke. Jack secretly has a crush on a top-performing A-grade student from another class, and his friends tease him about it. They have a rivalry with the rich kids from the school's basketball team, who often mock them for being poor. One day, as the basketball team practices, Jack drops a bottle onto the court, causing the team leader CVA's Vi to fall. This results in detention from their English teacher, Miss Liang. To avoid detention, the group plays a prank on Miss Liang and escapes when she's occupied. Meanwhile, the school's principal is troubled because the education board plans to cut 20% of their annual funding. Board members visit the school to inspect how the funds are used. At the same time, Henry, a new teacher, enters a classroom where students have set up a water bucket prank. However, Henry's quick reflexes save him, leaving the students surprised. Henry, aware that Jack smokes, asks for his pack of cigarettes. Jack hands it over, curious about Henry's intentions. Henry then quizzes Zufa on the ingredients in a cigarette, allowing him to skip class for the day. Other students demand the same opportunity. Instead of lecturing on health effects, Henry hands out cigarettes and encourages them to analyze them. He engages them by discussing the consequences of smoking, such as tar formation in the lungs. For the first time, the students pay attention and show genuine interest in learning. When the bell rings, Henry asks them to return the cigarettes, and the students reluctantly agree. One day in the cafeteria, the basketball team captain causes Jack's friend Bruce to trip, sparking an argument that escalates into a full-blown fight. Food and tables are thrown, causing chaos and damage. Later, Henry learns that 5 students, including Jack, are suspended for their involvement. Henry intervenes in a hallway fight between Jack and his opponent, urging them to calm down. Jack complains about the school being unfair, claiming that the rich kids face no consequences. After school, Henry delves into the backgrounds of the suspended students. Zufa, a Pakistani immigrant, faces discrimination and dreams of becoming a musician. Denan, disappointed her father wanted a son, strives for his respect but faces neglect. Brothers Bruce and Chris, abandoned by their mother, rely on each other. Bruce escapes through video games, while Chris works hard in a grocery store. As for Jack, no information about his family background is found. In the next scene, Jack works as a waiter at a restaurant. An MMA bettor named John Ying arrives, and Jack tries to steal his fancy lighter but gets caught. After a beating and ID check, John Ying, upon learning Jack is a student, offers him money and a job as a food delivery man. In another part of town, Henry visits Zufa's home and discovers that Zufa is running away from his father and associates after stealing a ticket. Initially helping Zufa, Henry later takes the father's side upon learning the reason behind the chase. They hang out at a bridge, where Henry motivates Zufa by singing with a street band. Zufa, overcoming past bullying, joins in and sings in front of people for the first time. Meanwhile, Bruce and Chris's father arrives home, late, as usual, and demands a beer from the store. When the brothers refuse, he angrily tells them to leave. The next day, Henry talks to their father and persuades him to go to rehab for the sake of his sons. In Danan's situation, her father gives her makeup products, urging her to act more like a girl. Angry at always feeling inadequate, Danan applies makeup on her younger brother and plans to drive away in her father's car. Henry intervenes, explaining the legal risks, and suggests an alternative, going to a go-kart racetrack. Henry invites Danann's father, and they all race fiercely. Outside the track, Danann's go-kart is nearly hit by a vehicle, but she dodges it. Unaware of the incident, her father mourns, believing she's gone. Danann realizes her father truly cares and hugs him, revealing she's safe. The next day at school, Bruce and Chris, along with a group, are sent to a rehabilitation center to interview a recovering alcoholic. To their surprise, the person they have to interview is their own father. The students inquire about his journey into alcoholism. He explains that he loved his wife deeply, but she left him during his lowest point, leading him to start drinking and forget about his 2 kids. Although he doesn't reveal that Bruce and Chris are his sons, he apologizes to them, leaving the brothers in tears. Meanwhile, Jack has begun working for the MMA bettor Jian Ying, who offers him a substantial amount of money to spike a fighter's drink in the upcoming match. Jack is hesitant but is pressured into agreeing. On the day of the fight, Jian Ying sponsors a fighter but bets against him. Jack attempts to drug the fighter's drink but is caught in the act. Before he can blame Jian Ying, he is beaten and locked inside a locker. Later, Henry arrives and inquires about his missing student. The fighters tell him to leave, but Jack, still inside the locker, calls for help. Discovering the trap, Henry confronts and easily overpowers the men. Despite an intense moment when the fighters intervene, Henry skillfully dodges their attacks. In the end, he knocks out their best fighter, who was scheduled to compete in a few minutes. In the next scene, they are at the hospital where Henry receives treatment for his injuries. Jack attempts to expose the truth about Jian Ying, but he is silenced. The news reaches television, and Henry becomes known as the man who stood up against a professional fighter to protect his student. His popularity at school rises, and students begin to respect him, welcoming him to class with enthusiasm, a stark contrast to their earlier behavior. A flashback reveals that Henry used to be a prankster in school, even throwing water balloons at a student playing piano during a parents' event. He later fought with the same student, resulting in a broken hand and a suspension before he flew to the States. From that day on, students pay attention in class, study hard for college entrance tests, and show improvement, except for Bruce. He becomes addicted to pills, using them to cope with family issues. While Chris turns to video games, Bruce's focus wanes, leading to poor performance in mock tests. Henry promises to help, but Bruce's depression deepens. Eventually, he jumps off their house balcony, landing in a coma. The media distorts the story, blaming the school and Henry for Bruce's actions. Officials from the education board interview Henry and decide to revoke his teaching license. As he packs and leaves the school, students run after him, pleading for him to stay. Heartbroken by Henry's absence, the students are determined to excel in their upcoming test to make him proud. They double their efforts to show the education board that Henry is an excellent teacher. On the test day, Jack and his classmates receive a text from Henry asking them to meet at school an hour before the exam. However, it's revealed to be a trick by Jian Ying, who wants to keep them confined to the school to teach Henry a lesson. Later, Henry arrives and discovers Jian Ying's plan. He frees the students and confronts Jian Ying's people to protect the children. While Henry fights Jian Ying, the students escape and reach the examination hall in time. During their one-on-one fight, Jian Ying discloses that Henry had thrown water balloons at him when they were kids, causing him to break his arm and give up his dream of participating in a music competition. Henry attempts to reason with Jian Ying, but the conflict escalates. In the end, Henry chooses not to harm Jian Ying, asking for forgiveness and walking away. The students complete the test successfully, and a few weeks later, they all pass with flying colors. Jian Ying resumes playing the piano, but he has a lot of practice ahead to regain his former skill. Bruce quickly recovers and pledges to attend the next year's entrance test. The principal is delighted as the board grants a 20% bonus fund due to the students' outstanding performance. Henry returns to teaching and pulls the fire sprinkler trick on a new batch of students, ending the story on a positive note.